welcome to DreamSpire TV and the Author's Lounge. I am your host, Cheryl Mays, and I am so excited to bring to you today an author that's going to share his experience. He's going to share his inspiration, his motivation behind this piece of work called Behind the Mask. The author's name is CR Bryant, and we are going to hear from him when we return from this commercial break. So definitely come back with us. Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How about yourself?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for being here today on the Author's Lounge. I am so excited that you were here and you're going to share with us your book and tell us about where all of this came from. So I am excited.
Well, it came from a lot of different things. It comes from love. It comes from passion. It comes from heartbreak. It comes from activism. It comes from being a father. So it's a combination of a lot of things that encompasses this Behind the Mask. But more importantly is we hide behind the mask. So that's where Behind the Mask comes from, because we never really want to take off the mask. So the title came from Behind the Mask, which is also the title poem in the book.
You know, it's so interesting. We're going to talk a lot about the book, but let me give you a little bit of your background first. So you're a writer, a poet, a coach. You have trained other individuals on being successful in their lives. And I have to say this because I always find this interesting. You started your poetry at a very young age. When yes. Most kids are outside playing, you're inside writing poetry. So you started poetry at the age of 8, which I love because that's when all the imagination and all that creative stuff is so uninhibited, where you can literally just kind of pour it out. And in addition to that, you are a proud father. So how many kids?
I have 4. I claim 4. Actually, 2 are biological. The 2 biological are girls. One is 15. I got to remember the ages. Then the baby is 6. And then the oldest is 20. She'll be 26 this month. And then my son, I've been raising since he was 3 months old. He is 12. So, yes, 4 lovely children.
And you have all of the ages. So you have from that, I still want to go outside and play, to leave me alone, to where's my car, to, oh my gosh, I need more money.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So I am sure definitely material for poetry.
Yes, definitely. The youngest one especially.
So tell us about this. So tell us about Behind the Mask. So before we do that, there's a book prior to this, and it's called Broken But Healing. Broken But Healed.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll get into Behind the Mask.
Okay, Broken But Healed was not a book that was supposed to be published. It was during a time period in my life where I was going through some things. I had just basically separated. Well, it had actually been a little bit longer than separated. It had been about 2 years since I had separated from my wife at the time. And then I realized that I hadn't been healed from childhood trauma. So starting there all the way up to the events that occurred in my life up to the point of the separation from my ex-wife. So that's where everything started, Broken But Healed. And so I wrote it just to get the pain out. And so I was done. And a publisher friend of mine, she was like, give me the book so I can get it published, because I was just done. And she said it could help other people. So that's how Broken But Healed came about. And it's amazing that it's been touched different people's lives. And what surprised me was I would run into strangers, and when they'd see him in a training session, that I was the author, and they'd be like, "You the one who wrote that book? I already got that book," or "It's in my queue to get that book on Amazon." So it's just amazing how you touch people's lives and do not even know that you touched their lives.
So, I think that is one of the great testaments of authorship, is that, we write a book and we don't know how far it ripples. Yes. And how far the messages actually ripple. And, you happen to have that experience. That's like an author's dream, is to have that experience when somebody runs up to you and says, "Oh my gosh, you're that person. You helped me."
Yes, exactly. Without even knowing that you've helped the individual. Yes, I agree.
Absolutely. And so your experiences brought on the first book and then carried you into this second book, Behind the Mask. So before we get to that book, why poetry?
It was a gift that I discovered at the age of 8, and maybe even younger than that. I was raised almost as if I was an only child, even though I'm not an only child. I was raised by my great aunt. And it was a lot going on between that time of when my great uncle passed and when I had lived with them. Mm-hmm. And so my outlet was always poetry, even though it wasn't always written. It was just my thing and my outlet that would be on the inside of me, especially spiritually. So it was also a spiritual background to it, especially when you raise on the Psalms. If you go to the Bible and read Psalms, David was a poet, so the Psalms was poetry. So it's poetry just fed into you. So that's where it came from, and it just went from there.
I think that's amazing. To your point, when you look at scripture, a lot of it is poetry and songs. And I think for what you've done is to actually capture people's emotions. It's kind of like, you capture someone's emotions and their feelings, and you're able to reinvent them to whereas it becomes something that's therapeutic. And yes, they can then see their hurt and their pain in these words and find healing from that. I think that's the gift of poetry.
It is. One of I'm not going to get into too much detail, but one of the more recent poems that I wrote I'm working already on the next book, but I wrote a poem after Behind the Mask was completed and sent into the publisher. And it was dealing with the pain that people face when you're talking about modern day slavery, which is more of the trades that are going on. I don't know if children are listening or not, so I don't want to be disrespectful, but the kidnappings and the taking of the children and selling them into slavery, into all of the things that go into that. And someone had asked for a poem to be written regarding that. So I literally took myself and put myself in a position of a woman or a girl in that position and started writing from that point. With that part being said, it just happens to be that I can take other people's feelings because I can feel what they feel. That's another part of the gift, and transpire that and put it on paper. And that could only be God at that point in time, because I do not know how I can read people, understand them, feel their pain, but I'm able to transpire all that and then be able to move that into writing.
That's amazing. Not only that, but you just made an announcement that there's another book coming out. So, guys, you heard it here on the Author's Lounge. There is another book coming out from Mr. CR Bryant that is after Behind the Mask. So when that comes out, you got to join us back on the Author's Lounge, because this is where he's coming to tell us about it. I'm just saying.
Yes, most definitely. Yes. That wasn't supposed to be announced yet, but I mean, it's in a way.
It just happened. It just slipped out. I won't tell anybody. Hey, we're going to come right back and we're going to finish talking with CR Bryant, the author of Behind the Mask, right after this commercial. So you definitely want to come back, because we got to hear what's coming next. joining us again. I am here at the Author's Lounge with author CR Bryant, the author of Behind the Mask. This book is available on Amazon. This book, you can actually, oh my gosh, there's so many places that you can do to follow this guy. You can go to Facebook at EB Scott. You can go to Instagram at author CR Bryant. And you can also find him coming up, which we're going to talk about. He's got a brand new podcast that is actually going to be coming soon, and we're going to talk about that. So now let's talk about the book, the collection. Let's talk about the collection of poetry. And I always ask this when I have a poet, because I always like to just see where you are. What is your favorite poem in the book?
Oh, there's actually a couple in there that are my favorite. One that's my favorite is The Love of My Daughter. It's a story about the love of a daughter for her father, and some of the things that happened with my daughter when things went awry, and actually with both my daughters when things went awry in the relationships. And how they felt. So that's transpired onto paper. So that's one of them. Okay. And then I have Behind the Mask, because it's so raw about how we come behind our mask. So those are two. And then I have some fun ones that I enjoy. It's a play on words. One is Nude and Naked. And that particular one is a little bit deep, and you'd have to actually read it to truly understand where it comes from, because it's not talking about actually seeing an individual naked as far as the body is concerned, but seeing their naked soul, seeing who they are as a person. So that's what that one is. And then The Essence of Her is another one that I love, which it talks about the Black woman in the essence of who she is, and how she is sometimes judged, and we miss the beauty of her as a whole. So those are my favorites in the book, but I love it all because I wrote them all.
So in other words, he's telling you guys, read the entire book, but read those first four first.
No, you have to actually read it in order, because it's actually telling a story as it goes through. Yes, if you do not start from the beginning, you will miss the actual heartbreak, love, activism, then back to love. And when it's talking about love, it's not just talking about relationships, but the love of yourself, the love of family. That's what I mean when I say love. But some of it is, a lot was based on relationships and how people go through relationships. I've even already had, for those who've already started reading it, ask me, hey, is this about a relationship that you've recently been in? And I'm like, no, there's a couple in there about that person, but no, not like you think. So I got to be careful with that, because when people think they know you, mm-hmm. what they look at and think is that the whole thing is about one individual, and it's not. It's just about writing and expressing yourself to get things out, and maybe someone else is feeling those things. They're just not seeing.
I love that. I love the concept, because it allows you to connect with the person where they are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so really important. And I think that's the gift. When you talked earlier about it being a gift, that mm-hmm. is that gift, is that you have the ability to connect with individuals where they are. Let me ask you this. What is it that you want people to walk away with?
I want them to walk away with the hope that knowing that life is poetry. The way we live, the way we go, it is poetry in every aspect of the word, because poetry is ups and downs, the good times, the beauty. But when you encompass it and put it all together, it's like painting a picture. And that's the same thing with life. It's a picture being painted. And you just got to find your niche and go with it. It's still poetry. Poetry is life. Life is poetry.
I think it seems like in anything, you can literally stop and find some beauty in an experience, or in a possession, or even in yourself. You know, that thing that you probably think is that nobody is looking at or nobody wants, that there is beauty in that because it belongs to you.
Yes, and what's so amazing is when I was going through the trial that I was going through, people didn't know that I was going through it. I mean, there were people who knew, but when people finally started finding out that I was going through certain things that didn't know, they were like, "You going through this right here, and all you've been doing is smiling and still helping people
Mm-hmm.
and doing X, Y, and Z, and nobody knew that you were going through. How were you able to do that?" And it's because you don't show your pain to everyone. That's the first part of it. And because if you're showing your pain to everyone, it's that woe is me, it really does you no good. You have to learn to keep smiling and keep going. That's the only way you're going to get through it. It may be hurting. You may get home and you're going to break down and cry, but the whole thing is you can't just let it be woe is me in front of everyone. You have to go with the part of living your life and thinking and knowing that it's going to be better, that's just a place. I just recently read somewhere that if you're going through hell, why would you want to stay there? You know, you want to keep on going, keep on moving. You want to move forward because the objective is not to stay in the midst of the storm that you're in. It's to go through the storm so that you can help someone else. So it's a learning experience for everyone. And then some things we put ourselves in. So that's another situation, another talking topic. Yes. So.
Exactly. Well, I think that's a great message. I so this podcast that you're putting together, called Love and Poetry, where did it come from? What is your goal with it, and what how do people get to it to be able to connect with you? And I know it's not available yet because it's coming soon. And we'll talk about how they can still connect with you on social media. But talk to us about this podcast.
So, love and poetry, the way it came about is that we don't really talk about love a lot. When we do, we think of it just in the form of a sexual or boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever the type of relationship that you may be in that's physical, but we never talk about love as a whole, the agape love, the filial love. We just always want to talk about, oh, I love this person, and we use the word loosely. So the word love encompasses life. A lot of people do not realize that love is life. And God is love, love is God. So that's where it kind of came from. And it's going to talk about all aspects of life. And then poetry, well, that's my passion. So when you talk about putting two things that I've been working on for life, especially the studying of love, and that's what the message that I was given is just to love everyone. Love and poetry goes hand in hand. So we'll be about love and talking about current events and about poetry, and not just my poetry, but breaking down different poems that some of the greats have written. When you go back to like the Harlem Renaissance, the Richard Wright, so some of the people that have helped influence my writing and studying. So it's definitely to a new level when you look at it that way. So that's how love and poetry came about. It's better than sports talk radio, which we're not able to really do right now.
It's always better than that.
Yeah, so it's just trying to reach, and then the other part is reaching our community as a whole, and whoever's life wants to be touched and changed, and talk about relationships.
And so when you look at what's happening today, when you look at where our country is, our world is, I see that from this, so many things are going to be birthed as far as, when you think of movies, when you think of books, when you think of poems, so much is going to be birthed from this time. What advice would you have for a young person that is interested in speaking up, spoken word, which is another form? What advice would you have for them to move from behind their mask and be seen?
I would say you just have to get out and do it, because you're right. There is going to be a lot birthed, and it's already a lot being birthed right now in the midst of while we're interviewing right now. Actually, one of the poems in the book is actually reflected off of the pain I can only imagine that George Floyd went through in his final moments. Not to take that lightly, but I did write it from that perspective. And I had a lot of rage and anger in me at the time. And it was a rainy day. and I was finally able to sit down and write. But they have to just step from behind the mask and just be who they are, who God has created them to be. The one mistake that we make as people is we never want to step from behind the mask because we're always trying to impress others. But you will have the people that you need in your life once you're doing what you were called to do and follow your purpose. Nothing else is going to even matter. So just get out and do it, would be my message. If you have the faith, step out and do it, because faith without action is just a wish. Don't wish, do.
There you go. I love it. I love it. CR Bryant, thank you so much for joining us on the Author's
Thank
Lounge
you.
today. I am so excited about this book, this collection of poetry. You definitely want to get this. This is available on Amazon. You are also going to be able to access it from DreamSpireBooks.com. There is a book prior to this, Broken But Healed, and you heard it here. There will be one after. So you definitely want to stay connected. And how do you do that? You find him on Facebook. That's where everyone is. On Facebook, he is E.B. Scott, and on Instagram at author CR Bryant. And he's also here on the Author's Lounge. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your gift, for sharing your inspiration with us in this book, as well as the other one prior to this one. And I am excited to have brought you to this show. And I'm so excited because I look for more from you, because I'm going to be following you, and I'm going to definitely listen to the podcast. And more than anything, though, guys, you got to get this book. So what would you like to say to the audience before we leave, sir?
Just follow your dreams. Everything else will fall into place if you just go. You just do a little bit with your faith, and God will do the rest for you and open up doors that you didn't know that you would have. And thank you for having me on today. I really do appreciate this opportunity. So thank you.
You are very welcome. Well, don't you go anywhere, my friend. I am going to just say goodbye. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on the Author's Lounge today. We had the opportunity to sit and chat with CR Bryant, the author of Behind the Mask and Broken But Healed. You definitely want to check out these books on Amazon. You want to follow him on Facebook as well as Instagram, and you want to look out for his podcast called Love and Poetry. And you also want to stay tuned for the Author's Lounge, because this is the place where authors gather. And we have an opportunity for authors to come on and share their books with you. And I am so excited whenever I get to bring an author to you that you might not have heard of, that someone that's new, that's got a new book, that's someone that you can meet and learn a little bit more about. And it only happens here on the Author's Lounge. So you definitely have to stay with us. Definitely follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, as well as Facebook. I look forward to seeing you all again. Have an amazing day.